Hello, kids. It's Grandpa Wes again, and this post is going to be a little different. This is going to have a number of poems in it, but it's all the stuff focused on motorcycles, cars, and airplanes. So it's gearhead stuff, right? And some of these my kids are going to be familiar with, but some of these I think will be even new to them because they're a little more obscure or ones that I didn't recite often or if ever. Um, and so they're not in any particular order, but I'm going to go through them. Actually, I'm reading off my own website here as I go through these, because on my website, I've kind of divided things into different categories: spiritual stuff, romance and family, and life's lessons learned. And this one's motorcycles and gearhead stuff. So anyway, I'm going to take you through these. Some of these will be funny. Some of them will be goofy, some of them more serious and so forth. But anyway, with that, here we go. The first one's called The Great Escape. And I wrote this after having kind of a frustrating day. And it's about getting in a car and going for a drive and getting your anger out as you just get out of town, right? And so it goes like this. My lights are stabbing deep into the darkness of the night. The center line is slithering like a snake about to strike. The gears are really tugging. I can feel the pistons moan. And what is gained when steel is pained? Well, at least I'm not alone. The pressures and frustrations that a man so often feels are sent into the distance with the spinning of the wheels. High above the city lights and winding up the grade, I leave behind a troubled mind as tensions slowly fade. I guide it onto gravel just a moment from the top. I venture to a viewpoint and I idle to a stop. First the music, then the motor, then the lights are all shut down. I stare out o'er the dashboard as I listen to the sound of my left front tire deflating. And the thought comes to my mind, you can try to run from troubles, but they're not that far behind. It's not so bad when down or sad to escape from all your cares, but bring your sense of humor for what hits you unawares. So that one is about how you try to run away from your troubles, but as it says, they're not that far behind. It seems like things roll upon you again and again and again. But just got to keep the sense of humor because life is full of challenges. So that is The Great Escape. This one's The Light Beyond the Grave, and this one is featured toward the end of my book, Molded on a Motorcycle. And I wrote this as I thought about, does eternity include things like motorcycling and so forth? And I kind of hope it does. And I kind of think it will. My gosh, the other side of the veil is as real as this side of the veil. And I doubt there's any joys and pursuits and so forth, at least that are worthy of involvement and upbuilding kind of things. But anyway, it's called The Light Beyond the Grave. I got to thinking about, that everybody, you hear about near-death experiences, and there's always that light that people head off toward, and I got thinking, what's that light about? So the last thing I remember, that doctor wouldn't quit. He pounded on my sternum and cussed with every hit. 'Twas then I felt a numbness and a silence oh so still. The darkness drew around me like a curtain. The darkness drew around me like a curtain across the sill. But with the blackness came a peace that took away the fright. And as I wondered at the scene, I saw that fabled light. At first so small and far away, but bright and white it grew. With its approach a thunder rose, a sound I somehow knew. It came to me, and then it stopped. I squinted at the glare. The light turned off, the thunder ceased, and I could only stare at the headlamp of a Harley with golden chrome so sweet as Dad in bright white leathers sat beaming on the seat. Amazed, I sought for answers. I searched his eyes. He winked. "Welcome, son. I'll take you home." I stumbled back and blinked. "Now take it easy, son," he warned. "You know the good book said that if you live a faithful life, he'll reward you when you're dead. There's mansions many in his house, most find it quite the lodge. He found for me the perfect room. I live in his garage. Talk about the perfect shop, my ratchet handle's pearled. Any tool you name he's got. After all, he built the world." Dad fired up his golden hog and said, "Let's hit the skies. I've resurrected Rumblin' Red, and now she really flies." I started toward the saddle when something jerked me back, and my heart resumed its pumping at that dang doctor's whack. I coughed, I gagged, I tried to talk. I wanted just to die. I faded off and dreamed for days of riding across the sky. But that was quite some time ago, and in this life you learn to live each day your level best. For death you wait your turn. Now I am one of many who have seen that awesome sight. At the portal of the grave I saw that shining light. But only I have seen the source of the light that splits the fog, and none believe my simple tale of the angel on the hog. I'm hoping it's not any time imminent, but I do look forward to riding again with Dad. That'll be fun. Um, this one is a tongue-in-cheek one. It's called The Motor Pool of God. And you ever wondered what kind of car God drives? Yeah, if there are such things as that in the life hereafter, what would be his ride? It's called The Motor Pool of God. The second coming was nigh at hand at the motor pool of God, when the chariot of fire blew a tire and threw a golden rod. The angels knew the time had come. They knew that come what may, they must provide a suitable ride or there'd be hell to pay. Well, they hunted down the finest cars, a chrome and steel safari. They bagged a Jag, they net a Vet, and captured a Ferrari. They included in Mercedes-Benz and the partners Rolls and Royce, a Coupe de Ville, and others still. The Lord would have his choice. Now, which grand car would be the star to rumble through the skies? They heard his voice declare his choice. Imagine their surprise. "I gloriously go to earth below," his voice rang loud and deep. "That world is rough, the journey tough. Believe I'll take my Jeep." I've owned a number of Jeeps over the years. We've had a lot of fun off-roading with those, and they are tough vehicles. I'm talking about the kind of the classic Jeep, the Wranglers, the CJ7s, things like that. And so, anyway, that's probably Heavenly Father, I'll bet, is more of a Jeep guy than he is a limo guy. So let's see what's next on the list here. All right, the only explanation. Yeah, some things just defy all scientific analysis and all reason, and it just tells you there's got to be a God because nothing else explains it. In ancient days, when early man feared the sounds of thunder, he then conceived an angry God to explain the awesome wonder. And so it went for all events and powers great or odd, with no apparent cause extant. Man made another God. As years advanced and knowledge grew, those gods have gone away. No God of wind, no God of fire, no God of night or day. But I have proof of some grand power who tracks me from on high. His eerie acts are evidence all science to defy. No physical law, no act of chance accounts for what I've seen. There is a God of traffic lights, 'cause I never get a green. I bet you can relate to that. Many of you, it seems you never, gosh, you catch every dang red light. And sometimes I think there's a man up on a mountain, you know, like in Vegas there, up on Sunrise Mountain. He just watches my car and he turns all the lights green for me wherever I go. And so if it's not some wizard on a mountain, then there's some God up there that just doesn't like me to get through the traffic lights. So anyway, that is the only explanation. All right, A Race Through Town. This is another motorcycle poem. And it's called The Race Through Town. One evening at a traffic light, I waited for the green. He pulled up on his Triumph and idled his machine. We nodded toward each other, so friendly and polite, and eased out on the clutches when came the proper light. And though we hadn't planned it, we started to compete and tried to make our fenders lead the other down the street. The boulevard was busy, the cars and trucks were thick. We hunted for an open slot and tried to make a pick. We slithered through the traffic between fenders, doors, and grills. We stayed, though nearly even, with our serpentining skills. When filled our rearview mirrors with a headlight coming fast, as mindless as a missile, barely missing all it passed. My British buddy gave a shrug. He knew I felt the same. It buzzed and beeped and blew on by to end our spoiled game. And set our blood to boiling fast. We thought we ought to shoot her. That airhead girl from junior high outran us on her scooter. I wrote that after just being amazed, riding through town. And this was in Vegas. And these little junior high kids are on these little scooters. And not that they're fast vehicles, it's that the riders have no clue to their own safety and to the fact that cars can pull out and turn left and turn right. And so they just mindlessly blast along the shoulder, just, probably maxed out at 35, but doing 35 in a 15, doing 35 in stop traffic. And away they go. And anyway, I thought how funny it is, particularly with stoplights and all that these little scooters and these moronic punks can really get through there. So that's what that was about. Me and my buddy got beat by a punk. This one's called The Stroker, and definitely my kids know this one. This was a popular one to be asked to share. And by the way, a stroker is in motorcycling. It's a motorcycle that has an engine that has had its displacement made bigger by having a longer stroke done with the pistons in the combustion chamber. So anyway, it makes it, you can either bore it out to make your pistons bigger, or you can make the cylinder taller to make it a stroker. More cubic inches, faster motor, all of that. And so somebody has a stroker, has a hopped up motor. All right, this goes like this. The shadows from the moonlight were cast upon the ground. He slips out from the cabin and walks without a sound. He pulls aside the creaking door that leads into the shack, and in the dark his Harley waits, silent, cold, and black. He pushes it to the winding road that descends the darkened peak and coasts on down without a sound, graceful, cool, and sleek. And at the bottom of the mountain, just outside of town, he kicks a sickle into gear and lays some rubber down. He steams a bead down State Street. He flies a left on Main. It's midnight in October, and the stroker rides again. 90 cubes of breathing steel roar between his legs. The Speedo takes a jerking right and rests upon the peg. Another left on 3rd Street. He screams right by the bar, where drunkards watch him flying and wonder where they are. The sheriff sits inside his Dodge. The Harley streaks on by. The sheriff puts the pedal down. The Dodge begins to fly. Oh my gosh, how did I forget that one? Oh my gosh. I almost need to stop this and start it all over. But on I go, because I'm going to punch through all of this. The sheriff sits inside his Dodge. The Harley streaks on by. The sheriff puts the pedal down. The Dodge begins to fly. The sheriff's tried 1,000 times to bring the stroker in. No matter what he's tried to do, he never seems to win. Well, they dive into those mountains like... I need to recite these more often. I'm starting to forget some of them. The stroker heads for mountains like every time before. The Harley's really thumping, though capable of more. They dove into those mountain roads like gulls into the seas. The sheriff lost it on a curve and plowed a field of trees. By chance, it was the very curve where just 10 years ago, a stranger died when he tried to lay his Harley low. Well, the Dodge just covered the hillside. The sheriff was never found. And now at night, about 12 o'clock, you hear a different sound. The midnight stroker blasts through town, and strange as strange can get. On his tail's that sheriff's Dodge. I'll get that stroker yet. I do think that's a poem that works better when you don't forget where you're at in the middle of it. See, I need you guys to more often say, hey, Grandpa, recite that other one. Okay, the 37 Pontiac is one I'm going to recite now. I'm probably going to make a whole video just on this because I've got a lot to say about it. But I will tell you that I wrote it as I was thinking about my children's dating life. And as they were, particularly when they were old enough to start looking for the right soulmate to be married to and so forth. There's a song by an artist I like a lot, Billy Joel. It's called Just the Way You Are. I love you just the way you are. And I've heard a lot of people say, I just want to find somebody who'll take me as I am and so forth. And I do like that sentiment to some degree, but I also think that's not the ultimate love. The ultimate love is somebody that can see more than what you are and love you for all that you can be and all that they see in your potential. And so that's what I want all of you to be looking for as you search for your partner, your spouse. The 37 Pontiac. A 37 Pontiac sat in a junkyard rusted. The engine froze, the glass disposed, what wasn't broke was busted. Now, Mechanic Dan, a handyman, saw more than rusted metal. A vision he'd seen of a car so clean and for nothing less would settle. Now, it took some time to clear the grime, but the builder did his duty. His devotion deep, he turned that heap into a classic beauty. Now, Mechanic Dan, in his old sedan, would serve well to remind us that those who truly love us most won't leave us as they find us. With all the vision, patience, and devotion under heaven, they'll help to build a classic you, just like that 37. So unless you are content to be like another common car, find a love who sees in you more than what you are. We love you all for what you are. But we also love you for what you're yet to be. And the good thing is we see it in you. So, let's see. The uncivilized world. It's kind of a play on words of the uncivilized world and motorcycles. And so I wrote a poem about there's people that you're just never going to understand what riding a motorcycle is about and how it makes you feel and how you experience things and so forth. And so it goes like this. I rode till late again last night through canyons cut through pine. My headlamp sliced a tunnel of light along the dotted line. I backed the throttle down a notch, which slowed the evening breeze. I gave the grips a gentle tug and pulled in through the trees. I found a clearing large enough for bike and boy and bag. I took my boot to rock and root and cleared each subtle snag. I laid me down beneath the stars too numerous to count, and I thought back to the frontier days as I lay beside my mount. And I felt some cowboy kinship while within my bedroll curled. With a half-sad grin I pitied them, those of the uncivilized world. Dawn's first light reveals the sight the night had masked in black. The rolling hills and whippoorwills call me from my sack. The saddlebags provide the fare that passes for a meal. The taste is bland and mixed with sand, but just the same, it's real. The ground dew damp, I break my camp and double check my load. The lines are cinched, the bolts are wrenched and ready for the road. With just one kick, my motor sick awakens from its sleep. Willing to go, it lets me know with a voice that's low but deep. The stand swings up, the gearbox clunks, the clutch is now released. Would be such fun this road to run if it weren't so darn policed. I idle through a country town as the morning paper is hurled. I follow a whim that's missed by them, those of the uncivilized world. The challenge of the mountain roads, the pavement at my knees, the world just leans and tilts the scenes to 45 degrees. The countryside through which I ride, though, is more than winding roads. The senses all are called upon to sample God's abode. I feel inversion layers, temperatures fall and rise, the moisture from the marshes, the sunlight from the skies. I smell the flowered meadows and the ponderosa pine, and now and then a barnyard, and I really don't much mind. I hear the whistle blowing from the distant diesel train and the banging of the boxcars as it rises toward the plain. I see the land like no man can while in a car so snug. I taste the joys of nature, and now and then a bug. I watch the sun retire low to settle round the bend, and as I roll that throttle back, I reel that sunset in. I'll ride till late again tonight, through canyons cut through pine, my headlamp slicing a tunnel of light along the dotted line. And I'll pause to rest beneath the moon that floats so silver pearled, and I'll give my thanks I've left the ranks of those of the uncivilized world. The view from the saddle. This one has to do with the importance of just getting out of the house, get out and go. And whether it's taking a drive in a car, a motorcycle is awesome for this because it puts you out in it, kind of like that last poem spoke about. But a walk is better than sitting on the sofa and seeing the world through a window. And so this poem compares the static aspect of living in the cottage, living in the house, versus the vital aspect of just getting out into the world. And you don't have to travel to China. You don't have to travel, by steamship around the world. It can be getting out in your own neighborhood, in your own community, getting to see the things around you. I'll talk more about that in a minute. So it goes like this. The view from the window is often so clear. The sun lights the skies and the hills. And sometimes the landscape is shadowed by clouds or covered by winter's white chills. The view changes daily in some little way as you glance through the glass and the pane. But except for the weather or birds flying by, the gaze gets to looking the same. But the view from the saddle is varied by time. Each moment reveals something new. You are the voyager chasing the sights that alter by angle of view. You bring to your vision the depths and the heights, the vistas, the brown and the green. The view from the saddle is vital and full, with you as a part of the scene. Away from your window, Mount up and ride. The earth has a sound and a smell. The cottage is shelter from wind and from rain, but the world is the place where you dwell. When we lived in North Carolina, in Charlotte, um, I do regret that I always intended to go and see, what is that? The there's like this, not a castle, but a big mansion up there in Asheville. Um, Shoot, the name of it escapes me right now. But I kept saying, yeah, we're going to go over there and see that, honey. And then next thing we know, well, next thing I know, 5, 6 years later, we get transferred out of there, and we never made it over there to see that one. Biltmore, that's what it is, Biltmore. But there were a lot of things we did go see. Kings Mountain, where the a Revolutionary War battle took place, quite influential battle. We saw a lot of things there we would stop every time we'd see a roadside marker, a historical marker. Stop, read it, learn a little bit about it, and it became really, you kind of fall in love with an area as you learn about its history, and you learn what's behind that mountain and what's around the corner and so forth. And we actually got to where we knew more about some key parts of where we lived than people that grew up there, because they just didn't get out and look at it. And so, anyway, that poem there is the cottage is shelter from wind and from rain, but the world is the place where you dwell. Do that. Get out there and see it. Be a part of it. Get to know it better. Get to know me better, man. This one I like a lot. It's called Today as I Ride Solo. You know, I spent a lot of years early in my life riding all over the country by myself. Certainly at first I was riding with Dad and some brothers and so forth, but I was 18 when I rode all the way from Florida to Utah on a motorcycle with just me. Nobody on the back, nobody next to me, just me. And then the next summer, I rode up into Washington from Vegas and back down to Vegas. And I've done a lot of solo riding. But things changed eventually, and I learned that as fun as it was, and I loved it, there's a way to make it better. It goes like this. Used to be so easy to mount up all alone and chase the far horizon and seldom think of home. The solitude was tonic to the worn and weary soul, as the taste of God's creations left the loner feeling whole. But today, as I ride solo, feelings change from what they were. Still enraptured by the beauty, I'm reminded now of her. How I long to have her with me, for my joy is now impaired. For I found there's no fulfillment like the joy of beauty shared. And I think I have found my experience that's very, very true. That however beautiful a nature hike is, when you have people to share it with, things are doubled. The joy of it is doubled. I think a little bit about in the Book of Mormon, Lehi's dream, the tree of life. Lehi goes, partakes of this beautiful fruit, and finds it's the most delicious thing he has ever experienced. We learn that in this representation that fruit was the love of God, the most incredible thing imaginable in the whole universe. Yet there was a way for it to be better. What was the first thing Lehi did after partaking the most delicious thing he ever had? Wouldn't you think it would be to take a second bite? No, because there was a way for this to be even better. As he turns around and says, where's Sariah? Where's my wife? Where's my kids? They got to have some of this with me. And that's how the best of things get even better. And that's how it is for you and me and our family. There's no fulfillment like the joy of beauty shared. And it won't be the same without you. So we want all of you, no empty chairs at the table. Let's all get together and do right, be right, get right, and obtain what is your right to obtain. Let's all get there together. So, this next one here, Tucked Against the Wind, I wrote, I'll tell you about it after I read you the poem. Riding a motorcycle, there's a lot of high wind coming at you, and it can be a hold on tight kind of a thing. This one, Tucked Against the Wind. Hunkered on the saddle of my Harley, tucked behind the shield to duck the wind, that's howling round my helmet like a banshee to press my face in some contorted grin. My pant legs loudly flap like twin machine guns. My gauntlets drive my fists to pierce the air. The tears are whipping underneath my goggles. I'd swear the blast intends to strip me bare. I wish that I were screaming down some highway, my sickle's speed the cause of such a blow, instead of waiting somewhere in Wyoming for the wind to stop so I can finally go. It's windy in Wyoming. And actually, on the very last ride I ever did with my dad, Donna and I, and Dad and Laura rode our two Harleys from Vegas all the way to Wyoming, to Devil's Gate, Martin's Cove, Independence Rock, and back. And of course, that's up in Wyoming. And man, we were riding and just riding our bikes like at 45 degrees to the side winds that were just blowing us all over the place. It's so darn windy. And when I got back, I got to thinking about, man, half of what's keeping your tears whipped up underneath your goggles and stuff was the dadgum wind over there. So that's a humorous poem about that. So, getting close here, folks. Rumblin' Red. In 1984, Mom and Dad had opened their first Big O stores in 1978. Dad had a Honda 750 that he had from 1974 clear up for the last 10 years. That had been his motorcycle. Up until that Honda, he used to get a new Harley almost every year. He would trade in one for another. From before he got married to, when we were little kids, and all the way up till eventually when we went overseas, he just kind of kept the Honda in storage, and every summer would come and ride it. Then when we moved back to the States, he was looking to start a business. He didn't buy a new bike. He put all of his money into the businesses. Well, the businesses were starting to do well about the mid-'80s. And Mom thought it's time that we treat Dad, that Dad treat himself to a new Harley. Hadn't had a new one in a long, long time. And Harley had just come out with the Evolution engine, which is a big, huge advancement. Rubber-mounted motor, just an incredible advancement in the reliability, the power, the smoothness, everything of motorcycles. And Dad had paid attention to that. He went down to the Harley dealership and was looking some of those over. And Mom arranged, the Harley dealer got a bright red Harley Davidson Electric Glide Evolution motor, 80 cubic inches. And it was the largest displacement engine available at the time. And she decided that she wanted to surprise Dad with it. And us kids kind of got together. Us kids are all adults by this time, but and they had a store on Decatur Boulevard in Las Vegas. And we had the dealership. After closing hours, Mom and Dad locked up the store, and then they went off to dinner. And the Harley dealer delivered the Harley to the Decatur store. Me and Jeff and Monty and Scott, we took the Harley and we rolled it into the showroom. We had these plate glass windows that you could just see into all of our tires in our showroom and customer waiting lounge and all that. And right up front in the spotlights in the front window, we parked this Harley, bright red Harley electric line. And then we all hid in amongst the tire racks because Mom, when they got done with dinner, said to Dad, I forgot some paperwork I need from the office, from the store. Can we go back? So now it's dark. They drive back, pull into the parking lot, and pull the car in up in front of the store. The lights are shining. The spotlights in the showroom are shining. And there's this bright red Harley in the showroom of the Decatur store. And Dad pulls up. He looks over at Mom. She's just grinning. She's just beaming at him. And she says, you deserve it. And he said, oh my goodness. Well, he gets out of the car and goes up to unlock the door. As we hear the door unlock, we all come running out of the tires. And it was just a big fun celebration, you know. And he's walking around it and sitting on it. And holy smoke, I can't believe it. And so that was Rumblin' Red. That's how it came into our life. And just an amazing, amazing motorcycle. And Dad had some buddies that rode Honda Goldwings, a Suzuki Cavalcade, some of the Japanese touring bikes. And as they would ride together, as anybody that knew my dad, he's going to joke with people and rib people, and they'll try to give it back to him. And so that's what we did. He did with that one, trying to brag about who has the finer bike. And I was riding BMWs at the time, but I wrote him a poem called Rumblin' Red that he really took a shine to that and memorized it himself and would share it with his buddies over dinner tables or campfires or whatever. He thought it was the last word on who had the best bike. And so it goes like this. On a highway east of Vegas one Friday afternoon, a dozen Honda Goldwings were whimpering up a tune. The riders all were fancy, all members of the club that bring along the kitchen sink and trailer out the tub. The computer sets the air shocks, the speedos set on cruise. They play CDs or DVDs, whichever ones they choose. Then suddenly, vibration. Their wings began to shake. The trees began to quiver and the road began to quake. They saw it in their mirror, a ruby-colored blur. They thought it was a comet, but didn't know for sure. Then a glimpse of recognition as it pulled along the flank. And no one even had to read the logo on the tank. They knew that Harley presence. They hoped the thing was fed. They thought to see a shaken man astride the Rumblin' Red. But his footboards didn't shudder. His windshield didn't dance. His Harley smooth as velvet. He gave them each a glance, and he left them with the feeling they had just beheld the king, though its seats are not reclining and its dashboard doesn't ring. Yes, the Hondas all were fancy, but they hadn't reached their goal, for the Goldwing has the gadgets, but the Harley has the soul. Yeah, Daddy loved that one. Rumblin' Red. Eventually, in 1988, he went to trade that in for a new bike, and I matched the trade-in offer from the dealership and bought that from Dad, and I rode that, till about 2004, something like that, when eventually I sold that bike. The Dad's Big Red was bought to kind of replicate the look of Rumblin' Red, and of course that's now the bike that I have, and that I've done a retro restoration. And Big Red is a relative of Rumblin' Red. This is a short one, a critter's view of a motorcyclist. Dressed in black and rolling with the thunder, he roams the road in search of helpless prey. He smacks a million bugs against his windshield and squashes squirrels and skunks along the way. With no remorse for all these fallen critters, he trusts his luck and lives on He trusts his skill and lives on foolish luck. Doubtless he will one day see our viewpoint as he himself is scraped from off a truck. We do kill our share of bugs, that's for sure. It's my favorite bug swatter, my windshield. I'm out there killing flies with that thing. But and now and again, I don't hit a lot of other critters. Never hit a deer, thank goodness. My brother has, but maybe a squirrel or a bunny here or there. But poor critters are figuring, boy, you're going to get yours someday. You'll see what it feels like. Hope I never do. An idle interest. So I love twin engine motorcycles. I've got a Triumph vertical twin. It's a two cylinder motorcycle. They just sound really, really nice. My Triumph has a nice sound. My BMW has got a flat twin. The pistons go this way. And my Harley has got a V twin. The cylinders sit in the vehicle, fore and aft, one leaning forward, one leaning back. And probably has the best sound of any motorcycle on the planet. That potato, potato, potato sound that the Harley is known for. And so I got to thinking about these things. And at the time I had a BMW in my garage and a Harley in my garage. And so I wrote this. It's called An Idle Interest. The old garage was filled with light as door gave way to key, and there within a pair of twins, one flat, the other V. I fired up the Boxer twin, it shuddered at the cold, but soon that Beamer barked the beat, its even cadence bold. The sound was such a pleasure, with tappets keeping time. I loved to hear it idle slow, its rumble like a rhyme. I left that motor drumming and stepped across the floor, flipped a switch, gave grip a twist, and lit that Harley's roar. The hog with cough and sneezes, then shook away the sleep. Then came a tone that's all her own that resonated deep. Its firing order staggered, a pause between each kaboom. An interesting session of jazz filled up the room. I closed my eyes and listened, then sank down to my knees as thundered tones of idling twins sent music on the breeze. And I chuckled then as I recalled those Sunday school recitals, for there I stood, a saint no good, just worshiping those idols. See, idol worship is a real thing. I worship the sound of those idling motorcycles. My brother Monty bought I don't know what year that was, but somewhere in the late 90s, I think. He bought a Harley Davidson Road King that was a beautiful deep green bike. And anyway, he wrote it over, let me look at it, write it, and so forth. And I wrote him a poem that night, just tell him how nice his bike was. This is called Envy. Poets describe our emotions with words that embrace all the hues of the colors you find in the rainbow, and such are the colors they choose. Red is the color of courage. Sadness is tinted blue. Cowardice comes in yellow, and in imagery this is true. But I have found there's an emotion whose color is verily real, not just some symbolic icon that you cannot see, touch, or feel. When Monty's new jade-colored Harley came thundering onto the scene, I saw in its deep lacquered finish that envy is actually green. I really did envy the gorgeous bike that he had there. He loved that. He actually got a model of his bike, a green model of his bike, and had that poem with it for some time. He went on to own a couple other Harleys, and I think he had a Sportster before that. But that was a nice bike. He and his wife and Donna and I took our Harleys, with another fella and rode from Vegas up to San Francisco and back one time together on that. Okay, away from motorcycles for a moment. This is called Late Night Check Flight, and this is based on truth. Some of you may know that I actually took pilot lessons for a short time. I've got to still have my logbook of logging my hours and so forth. They uh, they give you kind of free check rides, trying to get you to sign up for lessons. But lessons have always been very expensive, and renting airplanes, um, it's just always been out of my budget. Raising kids and spending enough money on motorcycles already, I just never felt I could spend the coin it took to finish that out. It wasn't going to be my career, and it's just a pricey hobby. So I love aviation. I love to fly. I just don't have my license, and I don't know. I'm getting older. Maybe I will. Probably I won't. But anyway, one night I was up actually with Monty and a flight instructor, and I was asked. It was a nighttime flight south of Las Vegas, out over the desert where there were no lights. There was no moon out that night, and you there were no cities. There were no roads under us to even see the car lights. And so, with the blackness of the night just blending with the blackness of the earth below, your altimeter was the only thing that told you how high you were. You really couldn't see and tell. And I got to thinking, what do you do if the engine goes out? This is a single engine aircraft. What if the engine goes out? What's the process? What's the procedure? And so I asked the pilot. He gave me an answer that was very memorable, and it caused me to write this poem some years later called Late Night Check Flight. On a late night check flight VFR, Yuma Vectors 160, moonless evening lit by star sheds no light on earth below. My flight instructor stares ahead as motor drones its muffled shout. I cannot shake the silent dread of dealing with an engine out. No city lights to gauge my height, no beacon in the black abyss. Terrain concealed by cloak of night. Would engine's death be death's sure kiss? My nerves to hide, I clear my throat. So can we dead stick set this down? What procedure can you quote for gliding blindly toward the ground? Without a pause, with confident tone, the sage old pilot loosed his drawl. We trim the aircraft to be flown at slowest speed above a stall. Full flaps and slats, and cinch your seat and hold a level aileron. And when we reach 500 feet, we switch the landing lights to on. Well, his manner served to comfort me until he finished with a cough. And if we don't like what we see, we simply turn those lights back off. Well, a glance and then a smile slow. I respond with heavy sigh. Cabin lit by gauge's glow. Without a word, we wing the sky. A proper plan improves our odds as we approach our great unknowns. Apply your hand, but trust in God's. Takes his plus yours to bring you home. I really like the metaphor that's found in that, and how oftentimes in life we need to prepare ourselves, work ourselves, do all that we can to be prepared, to be ready, to do all within our power to make things work out right for us. But in the end, it takes more than that. Most success requires some blessings, some grace, some assistance from the man above. And so keep him in mind and keep him a part of your plans and a part of your life. And happy landings from there. I don't remember this one. This is just called Motorcycle, And it's actually an assignment. When I went to SUU back in the early, I don't know what it was, 2008, 2009, something like that. I went back to school to get a degree, and in my English class, they asked for certain styles of poetry. And this one was, it's not even a rhyme and poem, but it just goes like this. Bar swept back like iron regions. That's a misspell. I got to fix that. Bar swept back like iron reins, grasping a hold of me even as I do them, pulling me toward an ever-growing horizon, both fully captured and teasing out of reach. Muscled sinew within the steel, mesh with flesh, melded, welded until no more appendage, one unit are we. Boy, there's a lot of misspells on that thing. Anyway, it's artsy. The first poem I ever wrote, I mean, I don't know, I probably did some Violets Are Blue kind of thing when I was in elementary school, but I was in 10th grade chemistry class, and my little girlfriend at the time was in the same class with me, and I was sitting there not paying attention to the lecture, but working on chemistry of another kind with this girl. I thought, I think I'm going to be a smart aleck. I'm going to write her a poem. And so this is the first thing I ever wrote. It's called My Love Song, which I wrote down and I passed it off to her. And it goes like this. I was lying by the river with love in my head. I could see her as clear as the deep riverbed. She was pretty and sweet, and she looked, oh, just right. I couldn't believe I was with her last night. I wanted to show her wherever I went and show all the people I knew what life meant. I wanted to give all I could, then some more, but I just can't improve her. She's a Harley 74. She wadded it up and threw it back at me. She thought that the song was about her, and it was about a motorcycle. And so that was my first ever poem. And a Harley 74 was it wasn't a 1974. Their big engine was 74 cubic inches. And so they would always talk about getting on the 74 and going for a ride. I mean, even back in the 50s, they were, and even the 40s, they were riding Harley 74s. So this one, this kind of sounds like it's about a horse. It's actually about a motorcycle, and it was about my BMW, which my old black one that I had for 25 years or whatever. And it's called My Mount. With many miles behind me and twice that yet to come, I'm shifting in the saddle to change what's getting numb. My mount is striding gently with an ever-present thump and an ox's share of traveling wear strapped across her rump. She wasn't bred for swiftness, though sluggish slow she ain't. She's rushed me through some canyon trails where quicker breeds would faint. She's dragged me across the deserts where I'd swear we both would burn. She's plodded through the drifting snow to bring my safe return. These years she's earned my reverence, so when a stranger bold suggests to me I sell her soon, after all, she's getting old. I aimed that stranger toward the gate and buckshot toward his end and clarified a one more guy. You just don't sell a friend. Well, that's kind of how I feel about Big Red now. That thing's never going to get sold. Don't care how old it gets. This one is written in a foreign language. It's actually written in English. It's called My Old /2. That old BMW, the first one I ever had, I bought when I was 16, is that's for about 15 years, BMW made a style of bike called a /2 because that was the designation for that generation of bike. And so if in the world of BMW motorcycles, you talk about a /2, people know exactly what you're talking about from the 50s and 60s, this type of bike. Some of the things I'm going to say in this I'm going to have to provide a glossary because terminology is only understood by some gearheads. And so this is an ode to my old/2. Black and chrome and dusty with its leather saddle low, jugs protruding outward where the cooler breezes blow. Couple decades come and gone, she's weathered well the years, and now my hands are on her grips and climbing through her gears. Some old sickles really whine, others simply squawk, but there's a few, a precious few, whose pipes can really talk. A sound that's deep and solid tends to grab me through and through when I open up the slides on my old/2. She idles oh so slowly, kinda rockin' side to side. Tappets, tick-tack tappin', pistons pumping me with pride. The gearbox clunks intently, and the spokes begin to spin. Hear it barkin' through the baffles above the whistling of the wind. The throttle sets a certain gait, while with me on the streets, cars have drivers bobbing heads to some broadcasted beat. They spend their fortunes searching for that tuned-in perfect sound, the perfect pitch, the perfect mix. Can such a thing be found? Then reaching down another gear, I share with them a clue as I open up the slides on my old/2. Yeah, boy, it sounds good. Glossary. /2 is a model of BMW built in the 50s and 60s. Slides, a part of the carburetor that controls the air-fuel mixture. Jugs are the engine's cylinders that stick out on a BMW out into the wind. And so that's some of the explanation of that particular poem. This one here, actually, I wrote as a song. I wrote it to the tune of a Neil Young song I knew, but I've since written my own tune to it. But it's just a short little thing, and it just kind of expresses how you feel taking a little evening ride. Watch my headlight thread the night, throttle cracking, crisp and tight, pistons drumming, wheels a-humming. I'm all right as I ride through the night. There's muscled sinew within this steel that reason tells me cannot be real. Flexing, striding, a stallion gliding, or so the feel, as I ride through the night. I've seen tension, I've known blues, but in the evening, a ride renews. A peaceful feeling since stress is reeling. Ah, how she soothes as I ride through the night. Got a little cold here. So I was 16 years old when I bought my it was a 1966 BMW R60. And so it was 8 years old when I bought it. And it was big, heavy, black, fat, saddlebags, big old fairing. It's something that old men buy, but not that teenagers buy. But I bought it because I wanted to do a cross-country ride. And you don't do that on small little dirt bikes or small little street bikes. You do it on something like this. And so everybody that I knew, all of my friends, even my girlfriend, thought, man, that is an ugly bike. What are you doing buying that old man's thing? And so anyway, but I loved it. And then, Dad was sharing some tall tale poems. I've mentioned that before. And so I kind of made my own tall tale poem to defend my purchase of my Beamer, as BMW motorcycles are often called. And so this is called Screamin' Beamer. It goes like this. I rode into this Dust Bowl town, ate beans at the local dive, when a few old boys began to noise some anti-Beamer jive. Now I had a Screamin' Beamer, that's BMW to you, and she could pass most anything, either around or through. But these yahoos just laughed at me, said I forked an old man's bike, suggested that I sell her soon for a wheelchair or a trike. I challenged them to meet me come sundown Friday night. They all showed up, though few came back. I reckon they died of fright. They all lined up along the side of the dustiest road around. Just bat your eyes, and the breeze from that brought dust from off the ground. I had the beamer atop the hill, the crowd stood there below, just a-laughin' and a-pointin' and a-darin' me to go. I fired her up, she came to life and roared like the ocean tide, made mountain quake and people shake and dogs run off to hide. I looked down along the dusty road to eyes peering up in wonder. At first they searched the skies for clouds as they heard my beamer's thunder. I hauled in the clutch, dropped her in gear, and said, "Townfolk, hold on tight. If you've not seen pure hell on wheels, you're gonna see her tonight." I blasted down that dusty road, and had already doubled back before the dust from my first pass had lifted from the track, caused eyes to pop and chins to drop till belly met with jaw. No one really quite believed what their eyes just saw. As I shot past, people asked, "Is that a rocket or a jet?" My show was through 'cause everyone knew I'd just won my bet. I still felt disappointment as the end of the ride grew near. The motor hadn't been running right. She'd been stuck in second gear. Well, as I slowed, and as I stopped, and as I turned the beamer off, a silence fell across the crowd, except for an occasional cough. 200 eyes were on me. My blood began to run cold when some man said, "Hooray for him!" And then he stood up bold. He said, "You're what we're looking for. Yes, you're just what we need. Our town could be a metropolis if but my plea you'll heed." He said, "No one ventures to our town because of all this dust. So if we're to grow, this dust must go. Really, sir, it must." I said, "I see you're right, sir, but there's nothing I can do." He said, "There is. The answer is your BMW. Mass in motion creates a draft." Now follow my deduction. Your beamer's speed is all we need to build the needed suction. You can see that with this dust, we're really in a pickle, but you could haul it all away in the slipstream of that sickle. Subtly, in harmony, a cheer rose from the crowd. It started low, began to grow, and soon was sung out loud. Fireworks fired out, each one followed by a streamer. A plane was riding in the sky. We thank thee for thy beamer. A pretty girl with flowers, she kissed me on the cheek. I helped her board the Screamin' Bee and took off in a streak. That dust was like a mountain, but I knew that I could move her. As I flew past, people asked, "Is that a Kirby or a Hoover?" Well, I dumped the dust days later in an old mine shaft I found, and that pretty girl with flowers is still hanging round. And the town is growing quickly like it's never going to stop, and it now boasts the country's largest Screamin' Beamer shop. So if somewhere someone's saying with an eye to future cast that the Beamer's days are numbered as a relic from the past, take a trip to this old town at Friday's final gleam. A tradition set to this day yet, the purebred Beamers scream. Wrote that when I was 16, I think. Might have been barely 17. I think I was 16. So that was one of my first poems. It was lots of fun. So that was my little defense of my motorcycle. Sunday Rider. This one's kind of stupid. I was like my father before me, who was known as the High Council, the Harley High Councilman. He would ride his Harley around Florida. The stake was huge back then to go and speak on Sundays at different wards around Central Florida. And he'd ride his Harley there. And I would often ride my Harley to church as bishop. And for my evening meetings and stuff like that, and the Harley, I'd just park right on the sidewalk in front of the office there. And so I was kind of known a little bit as that. And it seemed a little inconsistent. You know, you don't usually put Harleys and men of the cloth together like that. But, and so anyway, this is a tongue-in-cheek talk about that. He buttons down the snaps on his slick-legged chaps, and he's slipping on his jacket of hide. He's got it all together in his black dyed leather, and he's going to take a heck of a ride. The women and their children are a hoping, heaven willing, they'll be clearing from the streets in time, and maybe they're mistook, but judging from the look, his sickle's riding on a wave of crime. As if expecting death, those who witness hold their breath as he shuts the sickle down beside the church. He kills it with a cough as the gloves come slipping off, and he steps aside his mighty metal perch. Like a snake that sheds its skin to reveal the one within, leather zips and slides and snaps as in a song. And the evil riding wonder that arrived amid the thunder turns around to face the faces of the throng. I don't know really whether it's the sickle or the leather that would cause the people's judgment to be blurred, but in suit and silken tie, he seems quite the harmless guy. Our good bishop has arrived to preach the word. It is silly. I think this is the last one I got for you. And this is called the glider. It's back in the aviation world. And I don't know if you've ever had the chance to go for a ride in a glider. The big long winged things gets towed up in the air and then quietly flies around and eventually comes down. It's a beautiful world. The canyon is golden on the tip of my wing. With a thought, I am caught in a climb. I roll to the right and descend as I sing, flying free as a hawk in his prime. With all I possess, I feel for a lift to rise to where the angels reside. I looked on the eagle and borrowed his gift, and the same I became with a glide. So, folks, that's my Gearhead stuff. Looks like I've spent over an hour now walking you through some of those things, and putting it down just so you have it. And hope you enjoy some of them anyway, and can relate to the message of a few of them. But looking forward to riding with you now or riding with you later. But we'll ride together somewhere along the line. Love you. Bye-bye.